I want to talk a little bit about who I am and how I came to do this work. But before I do that, I have to just give you all a sincere thank you for giving me this opportunity. You can be doing anything else right now, and to give me this time I mean that. So I am a professor at Ball State University, and I am also, and there, I'm a professor of criminal justice and criminology, and I am also the director of our African American Studies program. That would equate to Pan-Africanism, as you all know it here in Ghana. Along with doing that, being a college professor, I'm also a mom. I have 3 kids. My oldest is a freshman at Ball State University. She is not her mother. She is studying science. She's studying biology. So she is everything that I am not. I also have a 16-year-old that will be 17 in a couple of weeks, and I have a 10-year-old. I came here on Monday, and I'm leaving tomorrow. Okay, and I say that just to say it was that important for me to come and do this, but also having to balance being a wife and a mom. I had to figure out how to make it work. So what does that mean? That means I'm going to be exhausted. That means I am going to probably have a little patience come Saturday. So I'm going to have to say to my kid, hey, mom's tired, let me have a break. But I will be there Friday to pick him up from school, because that's very important to him that I pick him up from school. He doesn't like for daddy to do it. And I will be there for the soccer game. And I'm not saying that for woe's me. I am saying that to say that we are all, as moms, constantly pulled and having to understand what our roles are and how we balance. And sometimes that doesn't look pretty. But those are the same problems that I heard you all talk about this morning. Before I became a mom, before I became a wife, before I ever became a college professor, I was something that we call a victim advocate. A victim advocate very much sounds to me like the same role that some of you have as DOVVSU officers. When a person, a woman, a man, a child would call the police and say, I've been the victim of a violent crime. It would have to be a violent crime. Sexual assault, domestic violence, what so. The police would go and they would call me and I would go. So we are a unit of, at that time there were 5 of us. Now I'm 50, okay? I know I look good, right? I own it. And let me tell you, I spent my 50th birthday here a few months ago when I did the domestic violence forum. My husband came with me, and we went to, where were we, Bismarck? We were at the bridge. We were at the Bridgeview, and he just really did a really good job celebrating my 50th birthday. So, but back in the day, and when I was doing that work, we were on call 24 hours a day. So there would be times where I would be asleep and get a call, and I would have to get up and I would have to go to that call. And that call could have been a sexual assault. It could have been a molestation of a child. It could have been a number of things. The ones that would frustrate. So we're going to talk honestly. Your commander gave us permission to have these honest talks. He said no one's listening, and I won't get in trouble. You guys won't call Ball State and said, she said this. And I would get really frustrated because I would get these calls at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would have to get up, and I would get there, and it would be a woman who had made an agreement to sell her body to a man, and then he didn't pay her. So because he didn't pay her, she then at that point would say, well, that's rape. And then she would call the police. And then the police would call me. So if she was selling her body, is that in fact, if I say I'm going to give you 100 CDs to perform an act, but then I don't give you the CDs after the act is performed, is that rape?
No.
It's not rape? Why isn't it rape?
Because I accepted to do whatever I did with you because I'm expecting the payments back.
Right, but you didn't pay me my money.
So it's wrong, you should pay me.
Okay, but you didn't pay me, so now I'm going to tell the police that you raped me. So is that rape?
Consent is given.
Well, okay, so when is consent given? So this is the issue with this, right? Is it consent or is it a contract? Because those are, at least in the United States, those are two totally different things. A contract is we're agreeing that you're going to do an act, and then I'm going to pay you for that act. Consent is, yes, I'm consenting to performing an act with you. And we have a meeting of the minds because mentally, psychologically, all those things, we are equal, so we can have that agreement. So what is it?
Come again.
Is it rape? Is that rape?
That's breach of contract.
It's a contract. So if it's then it's a civil issue. It's not a criminal issue. Are you? No. Listen. If you're not following me, you have to tell me that you're not following me. You have to stop me and say, I don't get it, Keisha. You got to slow it down because I get it. But are you following me on this? So what is it? Is it a civil issue or a criminal issue? Keep in mind, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I had been sleeping, dreaming about marshmallows and life beyond living in my parents' house and what's next. And I'm here, and the police are here, and this woman is telling us, I performed a sexual act with this man, and now he's not giving me my money. So what is that? That's a civil. Who says it's civil? So this is the issue. So this is the issue. So this is the issue. The issue is prostitution in the United States, where I live in Indiana, is illegal. Okay? So she's calling, reporting that she was going to take part. She calls and says it's rape. But when we get there and have the conversation, we realize very quickly that it's not rape in the legal sense that she didn't consent. It was a contract violation. But even more importantly than that, it was an illegal contract. So who goes to jail? They both go to jail? Yeah, you take him to jail and you take her to jail. So then why am I there at 2 o'clock in the morning if she's going to jail? She called and it was because she made a. But now what do I do? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I've gotten up out of bed. I've driven over there, and I tell you, doing that in my 20s was not difficult. There's no way I could get up at 2 o'clock in the morning in my 50s and do that. Just no. But what do I do? I'm there. I do what? I just tell police take them both, and then I go home and get back in the bed.
You will be part of the investigation process because you are an advocate.
I'm an advocate, but who am I advocating for? My job is to advocate for victims of crime. If she's saying she took part in a crime, is she still a victim?
Yes.
You stay with me. You getting in. You getting there. Who's lost? Who else is lost? Who else is lost? Okay, so listen. So he is not a victim. Okay? He is not a victim. Think about power. Okay? He comes in with money. Think about everything you just learned with power. He's using his power and his money to solicit this person to do something. So he's not a victim. As far as I'm concerned, we put the handcuffs on him. I look at him like this, and then I'm focused on her. So now, how am I focusing on her? Because she's committed a criminal act as well.
Yes.
The act of selling her body, which I'm assuming that's illegal here in Ghana. It's illegal in where I live. It's not legal everywhere in the United States, but it is illegal where I live. So what do we do? What do I do? As a person who provides immediate services to victims, what do I do? Or what should I do? I talk to them and counsel them. Okay. Are we ready? Okay, so I talk to her and I counsel her, and I offer her an opportunity to learn about the services that are available to her to get out of that lifestyle. I don't pass judgment. I don't say, "Ooh, you're nasty." You know, why are you doing that? Because remember, this probably, more likely than not, isn't the first time she's done that. And my 15, 20-minute conversation with her, which often is all the time that I have, is not going to be enough to get her out of that. So offering her the resources, helping her to understand the harm that she is doing to her body, and providing her an opportunity to step out of that, even if it's for a day or so. That was my responsibility. So I bring that example up because I think that it really speaks to this notion of how do we manage clients, because it's not always very clear-cut, right? Who was the victim? Who was the offender? Was there a victim? I'm tired. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Because we cannot dismiss who we are in this process of supporting people, okay? Because the second we dismiss that, then it becomes very rote. You guys know what I mean by that term, very, very robotic. And that human element of seeing the humanity in a person goes away. My whole goal is, in all of the work that I do, is that we see the humanity in each other. So whether or not I'm doing these trainings here in Ghana, whether or not I'm doing them in Belize, or whether I'm doing them at home, my purpose at the end of the day is that you see the humanity in the people that you are working with and for. And I've done these trainings in those countries. I've been in Botswana where these trainings have taken place. And one of the things that I see that's missing is that we get so burnt out, we get so caught in the cycle of the routine that we forget the human behind it. And so that's my goal. Also understanding that we have to manage ourselves in our space, that we have to be difficult. You know, my kids, because I did this work, and then when I stopped doing this work, I worked with sex offenders, men who hurt children, who sexually abuse children. I did that. And my kids often will say, my youngest one, he's real good at this, he'll say, "You're the no mom." you're the no mom. And I'm like, yes, I am the no mom because that's my job to tell you no, to make you a good human being. But also I recognize that because of my previous work, I know that the world isn't a safe place for everybody. So my no's are probably a little bit more, my kids probably get a little bit more of the no's than the neighbor kids, just because I understand that not everybody's safe for my children. So that's who I am, that's how I operate, that's why I do this work. I'm here, I'll go home, I'll be home for 3 weeks, and then I'll go to Belize, and I'll do this work, or similar work there for a week. Then I come home, and I'm home for another 2 weeks, and then I'm gone again. So that's just part of it. And in between, I'm teaching classes. So I want to talk about best practices in handling domestic violence cases. Any documents that you see on this PowerPoint, if you want copies of those, I can get you copies. All you have to do is let me know. If there's any thing that you have a question about, stop me. Hey, I'm not sure on that. So let me ask you this. How many of you have ever had a case where a woman comes to you and says, or calls and says, my husband is mean to me? She doesn't give you any other, she just says, he's mean to me. Anyone ever had that? No? Where they just call, or they just show up at the police station and they say, I need help, my husband is mean to me. No. No. Just mean. Mean. M-E-A-N. He's not nice. They just call and say, they don't say why he's not nice, they just say he's not nice. Yes. And then what do you say? Well, what does that mean? Why is he not nice? What, or do you?
We invite her to come. So when she comes and explains to me the reason why I say, my husband is mean to me, if there's a need, we call the husband to come.
Then you'll call the husband to come. Okay. So then you have the husband and the wife in the room together. Okay. So let's talk about client management. So I know you've seen this before, but has anyone else seen this before? Anyone? Okay, so this is the power control wheel. We use this wheel to explain to women what abuse is, okay, and the different forms of abuse. Now, we learned earlier today that all abuse stems from power and control, or we talked about power and control in terms of how it's used in abuse. So the center is always about power and control. I don't care where I've been and I've talked to women. I've talked to women here. I talked to women yesterday. I talked to women in Belize. I talked to women in the United States. It always comes back to this. It always comes back to this. One of the things that I want to encourage you, I want to say to you is that violence against women, intimate partner violence, child abuse, that is a global epidemic, okay? It is not just happening in Ho. It is not just happening in one part of the United States. The leading cause of death for women who look like us globally is at the hands of their partner. So that's why I can do this work confidently here and work for you and with you, alongside you, for you and with you. I'm not coming in here trying to tell you what to do. I want to work with you and alongside you. Do the same thing in Belize and do the same thing at home in my own community. Because we know that 4 out of 5 women globally that look like us, that have skin like us, will be the victim of some type of abuse, whether it be physical or sexual, at some point in their life. That tells us that even though we're the experts, okay, because we're all the experts, you all are the experts. You're doing this every day. You know this better than I do. If we did the math, at least 3 women in here will or would have or have already been a victim. Okay? So that's why we can look at this from this lens and look at it from this point. But one of the issues that we have is that we only really tend to focus on 2 forms of abuse. What are those 2 forms? Say it out louder. Psychological, physical, and emotional. So those are the 2 that we tend to focus on the most, but yet and still if we look at this, we can see that all of these are also forms of abuse. So all of these, let me explain it, thank you. All of these forms of abuse end up being about power and control. So if I beat my wife, if I'm beating her, why am I beating her? Because I want to control her. Because I want her to do what I'm telling her to do. She's not obedient. She's not doing what I say. She talks too much. I get that one a lot. I hear that one a lot. She talks too much. Women do talk more. We use more words, but that doesn't mean you can knock me upside my head. No. So, but let's look at these other things. So let's look at economic abuse. So how often have you heard of situations where a woman says that her husband is controlling the finances, that she has no say? Now listen, let me tell you this. It's one thing for us to sit down and say, this is how we're going to manage our money, and this is how we're going to do this. That's fine. But when a partner tells another partner, I'm controlling the money, you have no say in how we spend the money, that's abuse, because he's trying to, that's power and control over the finances. Okay? What about male privilege? We heard about this earlier today, how men exert their power in the household. So the last time I was here, I did the domestic violence forum, my husband was with me, and I couldn't talk about him. But now that he's not here, I can talk about him, because he's not going to find out that anybody doesn't talk about him. That I talk about him. The same thing with my daughter. Now that she's at Ball State, I can't talk about her, but before I used to. So when we talk about male privilege, it's making the big decisions, acting like he's the master of the household, okay? Defining your roles and his roles. I'll tell you, when we've been married for over 20 years, and when we first got married, I moved into his house. Okay, he owned a house, and I moved into it. And you know, when we were dating, and I would visit his house, it was his house. It was always so clean and organized. You know, the garbage was taken out. You know, everything was nice and neat. And after a month, I'm looking like, okay, when's he gonna clean up? Mm-hmm. When's he gonna clean up? And I had to say, you know, hey, dude, you know, that's your laundry and it stinks. And he's like, no, you're gonna do my laundry. No, I'm not gonna do your laundry. Now, in my situation, that worked. We were able to talk about that. And that wasn't an issue. But think about a woman who doesn't have her own, and because actually I threatened to leave. I was like, if you can't clean up after yourself, this marriage ain't gonna work. And I still have my apartment keys. At that point, I still had the keys to my own place. I was like, I still have these apartment keys, and I can go to my uncle's house. And so, you know, but we had to figure that out. But what if I did not have that power to be able to say that? most women, a lot of women, the average woman does not. I recognize that I'm in a place of privilege to have been able to say that. Most women don't. How you define what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, okay? Who makes those definitions? You know, who decides what's feminine? Is it women or is it men? In the United States, in our culture, a lot of times it's men, especially in our churches. They decide what's appropriate. They decide how women should dress. They decide how women should behave. That's that power. The man is the master of the castle. So that's male privilege. Now, see, and this is the thing. Often, these things will lead up into physical abuse. So, if we can identify these things, these behaviors first, and educate women on these behaviors, then they can start to understand and see when these things are about to possibly occur. Using the children, making her feel guilty about the children, threatening to take the children, taking the children, and then holding the children and saying, you can't see the children until you do this, that, or the other. I see that a lot in certain work that I do. Blaming her. If you had done this, then I wouldn't have done that. Saying it didn't happen. I didn't hit you. You fell. I didn't do that to you. Isolation. How many of you know of a friend or a family member who you used to spend a significant amount of time with or be able to connect with, however you connect, and then all of a sudden they're in this relationship and they can't, and that's not happening anymore. Now, it's one thing if they're in that relationship and they're in love, you know, so I'm in love, so, you know, that's different. We're not talking about that, you know, we're not talking about that love. We're talking about where, you know, clearly there's a complete disconnect and breakdown. An example of this is a friend of mine. She's been my friend for over 30 years. We went to college together. We were in college together. She married this guy, and we went from talking on the phone every day to not talking at all. And I would call, and she wouldn't even respond with a text. So one day she calls me and she's crying. And she tells me that she made more money than him at the time. She had a big fancy job, and she told me that he had taken her checkbook and told her that she couldn't pay the bills. He was going to pay the bills from now on, although her money paid all their bills because he didn't make any. And then and that she could not hang out with us anymore because she needed to fall in line. She needed to fall in line. Now, isolation, male privilege, and financial abuse. And so I said, has he hit you? I think I said, has he hit you yet? Oh, Lord. So what was the problem with that? I think either I said, has he hit you, or has he hit you yet? What's the problem with that?
You're only focusing on the physical abuse.
Yeah, so then what did she do? What do you think she did? She got mad and quit talking to me on her own because I was telling her that her man was an abuser. So I think I just said, has he hit you? I don't think I said, has he hit you yet? And it took 5 years before she reconnected with me. They're still married. You know, they're still married, but, you know, that was part of the problem. So that's the isolation. And he is emotional. I don't know if he's hit her, but I believe if I had to put money on it, I'd put 5 CDs on it. that he's hit her. I would put 5. You know, so I'm in love. So that's different. We're not talking about that. You know, we're not talking about that love. We're talking about where, you know, clearly there's a complete disconnect and breakdown. An example of this is a friend of mine. She's been my friend for over 30 years. We went to college together. We were in college together. She married this guy, and we went from talking on the phone every day to not talking at all. And I would call, and she wouldn't even respond with the text. So one day she calls me and she's crying. And she tells me that she made more money than him at the time. She had a big fancy job. And she told me that he had taken her checkbook and told her that she couldn't pay the bills. He was going to pay the bills from there on, although her money paid all their bills because he didn't make any. And then, and that she could not hang out with us anymore because she needed to fall in line. She needed to fall in line. Now, isolation, male privilege, and financial abuse. And so I said, has he hit you? I think I said, has he hit you yet? Oh, Lord. So what was the problem with that? I think either I said, has he hit you, or has he hit you yet? What's the problem with that?
We're only focusing on the physical abuse.
Yeah, so then what did she do? What do you think she did? She got mad and quit talking to me on her own. Because I was telling her that her man was an abuser. So I think I just said, has he hit you? I don't think I said, has he hit you yet? And it took 5 years before she reconnected with me. They're still married. You know, they're still married, but, you know, that was part of the problem. So that's the isolation. And he is emotional. I don't know if he's hit her. But I believe if I had to put money on it, I'd put 5 CDs on it that he's hit her. I would put 5. I'm not a big gambler. I can't, you know. And I gotta get home. I gotta get home to the kiddos. But my suspicion is that at some point in their relationship, he has hit her. Then we have intimidation, we have emotional abuse, and we have threats. Threatening to. I'm going to. If you don't do this, I'm going to do this. So, again, we use this as a tool to introduce women, because this was made for women, to understand how these other forms of abuse can lead to physical and sexual abuse, or just be abusive in and of themselves. They're acts of abuse. So when we think about how we are managing our clients, one of the ways in which we can manage them in that short period of time that we have with them is through education. So when they come to the office, what are we talking about? What are we saying to them? If they're saying, he's not treating me nice, he's being mean to me, he's not treating me fair, then we can pull this out and say, okay, and then talk about some examples. I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
No, you mentioned something that said you can pull the topic down.
Yes, you can pull this out and ask questions. Every domestic violence center that I've been in the United States, and I introduced this to Belize, they didn't have it before, but even in Botswana, they had this. So this has been a universal teaching tool. It's been used since 1976. It's not as old as I am, but it's close. And it hasn't changed because we still rely on it. It's still very useful. And again, I can get you all copies of these things. So, you know, if you're taking pictures, that's fine. But don't feel like you have to write everything down.
So these are all criminal offenses which you can send the the perpetrator caught.
So in the United States, the only forms of abuse of an adult that can go to court are sexual and physical. So although these, you can't, economic abuse in some situations, but the rest of these, unless they went along with physical abuse, I wouldn't be able to turn this over for a crime.
So what happens to the perpetrator?
So if somebody comes to me and they say, this person is using my children against me, and we go through this, and they're like, yeah, he's doing this. More likely than not, he's also using physical violence as well. Rarely in my 30 years of doing this, I've been doing this since I was in my 20s. I finished school early. Have I seen, when I pulled this out and worked with a victim, that she doesn't identify a couple of these and then also say that there's physical abuse. One of the things that we see too is, and I don't know the law on this, so I can't speak on it for Ghana, but sexual assault in the marital relationship, that in Indiana is against the law, even if you're married. And I see that a lot with this. Sometimes I would see that before I actually saw physical abuse, where the woman doesn't consent. But in the United States, it had been that marriage was consent, so we didn't recognize sexual assault in the marital relationship, because once you got married, you were consenting. The last 10 or 15 years, that has evolved. And so now we do have laws that say that you cannot have sex with your wife if she does not consent, even in the marital relationship. I don't know what the laws are here.
I wanted to ask you a question.
Yes.
All this while, the focus has been on the woman.
Yes.
Women want to do.
Yes.
And society has structured life in such a way that men feel like certain things are mandatory. They are expected that women should take up certain roles. And the focus has not been on the men to understand that it's time for us to also play certain roles. So I think this time we are trying to misplace priorities, because the women are getting educated. And when they come home, it's difficult for men to understand that these are some of the things that we also have to do. So the men become offended when the women are saying that, no, you have to do the laundry or maybe clean up the kitchen.
Because no, I totally get what you're saying, and I see that in other places where I go as well, where women are here and men are here, in terms of, and so then there's this tension, because I don't understand these new rules. As a man, I'm still thinking that these are my wife's roles, these are my girlfriend's responsibilities. I get that, and I agree with you 100%. We have to do more to educate men, and we have to bring them along as we are bringing along our girls, as we are bringing along our boys. But that also does not give him the right to be abusive. No, I'm not suggesting that, and I'm not suggesting that you're saying that. But what I'm saying is, a lot of times that's part of it. And I'm thinking in particular about my work in Belize, where there's a lot of conversation about women's rights and where women are, women in leadership, and men are struggling with that. And we also, so we're seeing, increases in things, and that's part of that conversation. No, I get it, but I also wonder too, who should be leading those conversations? Should I be leading those conversations, or should you be leading those conversations? Yeah.
There's a question for you.
Yes.
If I heard you, you were saying that if in America you marry the person, and without the consent of the wife, the man can have sex with you at any time that he likes. That's what you said.
So in the United States, in some parts of the United States, having sex with your wife and she's not wanting to have sex with you is against the law. Primarily because in the past, the law recognized marriage as the ultimate form of consent. The last 10 or 15 years, those laws have evolved to suggest that the marriage vows do not equate always to consent. So the consent form, I don't know how you all do your vows here, but the consent comes from I promise to love, honor, and obey. Do you all say that here? That the wife says, I promise to love, honor, and obey. Well, that love, honor, and obey, that obey part is the unconditional consent to sexual acts. But a lot of people a lot of women aren't saying that anymore. And to keep up with these changes, there are some states that are now saying that a man who is in a relationship with his wife, and if his wife says that he raped her, then that can be investigated. Now, to the extent to which that occurs in a functioning marriage is zero. Like, okay, my marriage is functioning, right? I'm never going to call the police and say that my husband sexually assaulted me. We're good. As long as I get home, the garbage is out, everything's clean, the kids are clean. After this 12-hour flight, we're good. So I'm not going to do that. These laws were put in place to recognize that violence and sexual assault often occur together. And what was happening was we were finding cases where men were being convicted of the physical abuse, but they weren't being convicted of the sexual assault. So that's why these laws are on the books now. Some states require that you be legally separated. Some states require that you have a restraining order. You all have protection orders, stay away orders, that one of those are in place, and then he has to violate that and commit the sexual assault. Other states just have it on the books that a man can be charged with sexually assaulting his wife, even in a legal marriage. But again, that sometimes, and I'm not a lawyer, but the intentions of why a law was created and how the law are used conflict. Okay, but any other questions? Does that make sense? I mean, I know you probably don't agree with it, but does it make sense? Do you understand it? Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more about client management in a practical, everyday sense of what we can do. So as a victim advocate, one of the first things that I did was ensure that if medical care was needed, that medical care was given. So for example, I had a case where a mother came to our office. She actually came to our office with her daughter because the daughter was 4 and the brother was 13. The brother had sexually assaulted the 4-year-old right before he had left for school. And the mother was at work. She would come home from work right before he got on the bus to go to school, and then she would wake up the 4-year-old, get her ready, and take her to school. Well, this particular day, he went in and he sexually assaulted the daughter, the 4-year-old daughter. So she's in our office, she's in shock, she's scared, she doesn't know what's going on. Then we have the mom who's just confused, and trying to figure out all of this because this is her son, this is her daughter. So before we could go do anything, the first thing we did was put them in the car and take them over to the hospital, because medical care is always the first and foremost. One is the preservation of evidence. You know, was there indication of trauma in the vaginal area? Yes, we saw that. Was there bodily fluid exchange? There wasn't any bodily fluid exchange, but you could tell that penetration had been attempted. It didn't succeed, but it had been attempted. Were there other physical indications of trauma? Yes. So we needed to collect all of that. One, also to make sure that medically she's okay, but also for evidence preservation. That's the policing side of this. Whatever we can do to get that evidence, we need to do. And so when we're talking about any victim of any type of crime that presents physically, we need to get them in front of a doctor. The second part is protection of the victim. In that particular case, the mother got upset with us. And she got upset with us because she was told that her 14, see, he got on the school bus and went to school. So he had no idea that, you know, what was going on. So when he got off the school bus, there was a detective waiting on him with handcuffs to take him to jail. Yeah. Now, I often, and I hear this all the time in America. I don't hear it as much in other places, but I hear it in America when I'm working with black people, people who look like us. And that is the fear of turning someone over to the police because of the historical relationship, not even historical, the relationship that black communities have with police officers. My position has been and will always be, whether it's my husband, my dad, or anyone else, is I need to protect my children. And any child that comes into contact with me becomes my child. So the safety of that child always comes first. And it's not even about the physical safety, it's about the emotional security. So putting that young man in handcuffs and putting him in jail, and then being able to say to his 4-year-old sister, he's not coming home tonight. You can sleep in your bed and he's not going to come into your room. That, to me, that's worth the price of gold. You know, she probably didn't sleep in her room. She's probably petrified. But being able to say to her that, even though the mom was upset because she didn't understand why the son couldn't come home. And she kept saying, I'll sleep in the room with her. Well, you probably were going to sleep in the room with her anyway because of the trauma, but that's not enough. I cannot tell you how many times as a woman who worked with sex offenders, I would bring the family or the people that he lived with into my office, and the women would say, well, he knows he better not touch my child, or I sleep in the room with my child so that he doesn't touch my child. Or, you know, in their minds, they're thinking that they're protecting their children and at the same time loving their man. But in the reality is sometimes loving your man has to go to the back burner and 100% has to go to protecting your children, because when you have people like that in your house, they can be unpredictable. And that's just my experience. And then this is where it becomes very important in terms of client management, in terms of the number of cases that you're dealing with, as well as your own self-preservation, knowing when it's time to send them off to the next step. Okay? In my situation as a victim advocate, my job was to walk them through the first time that person went to court. So I would go to the hospital with them, the police, I'm walking them through the police investigation. I'm telling them what's going on in terms of evidence collection. And then the first time that person, that accused individual, went to court, I sat with that victim. After that, I handed them off to a different advocate who was trained in long-term trauma care. I'm not trained in long-term trauma care, so that's just not me. And to be honest, emotionally, I don't think I could handle that just knowing me. So, the next thing, and again, I have this in an actual document that I can give you all, is providing safety plans. In communities where we don't have safe houses or shelters, providing a safety plan for someone is crucial. So you bring her in, she comes in, and he comes in, they're in the same room together, they're talking. Hopefully, at some point, he's out of the room, and you're having a conversation with her. Whether he is going to be arrested or not, the likelihood of them being back in the same house is probably significant. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. And so establishing ways for a woman and her children to keep themselves safe is paramount, especially if you don't think you can make an arrest. You know, maybe the physical evidence isn't there. Maybe the communication regarding the behavior isn't appropriate. So keep a list of safe people you can contact, okay? Helping them with that. And then putting that in a location where hopefully he doesn't go. You know, my husband's not in the kitchen. You know, I can hide anything in the kitchen because he ain't going in the kitchen. I mean, he's going in the kitchen, but he's not in the kitchen, in the cabinets and all of that. If you have a cell phone, educating them to keep that charged at all times. Establishing a code word. In our family, we have an emergency code word in general, just because of the amount of traveling that I do and the fact that my daughter doesn't live in our home anymore. And that code word is Marriott. So if anyone ever gets in trouble, we call and we say Marriott, and we know that that person they need something. Plan how you will respond. So these are all things that you can do to educate and I'm assuming, are you all probably already doing some of these things in terms of when you're talking? Some people are shaking their heads yes, some people are kind of no, but these are all some of the things that you all can be doing in terms of empowering her. Okay? Because what this does is it allows for her to leave with a sense of, I've got a plan. I know what to do. Reminding her that she has a right to live without fear. Going back to that notion of humanity, you know, there are certain rights that we all should have, right? That they're God-given rights. And one of them is that we should be able to live without fear. Now, this is an example of the safety plan document that I'm happy to share with you. And within this document, there are multiple lines in which can be filled out. So for warning signs, there's like 5 different ones. I just have one up here for the example. But recognizing the phases of abuse within your relationship. We call it the red rose phase, and it's the three stages. Are you all familiar with that? Tension building, abuse, and then red roses. So the idea is identifying when that tension is starting. Is he slamming doors? Is he short with the children? Is he being a total, not nice person. What is he doing? What is that sign that lets you know that we're building up to something? And also recognizing that could be weeks. So today he's slamming doors. Next week he's doing something else, but it's all building. So that's the tension phase. Then you have the explosion phase, which is the abuse. For some people, it could last for, 5 minutes, where he just gets it out. For others, and I've seen this unfortunately, where it lasts for days. I worked with a woman in Belize who her husband locked her in a house and wouldn't let her out. And he would come home with a girlfriend, and he and the girlfriend would be in the other room, and she would have to hear them. But all the windows had bars on them, and the doors were locked. And she would be talking out the window. And so that lasted for weeks. And then internal coping. So what are some of the things that we can help women to do to cope internally with this, with abuse, being in an abusive relationship? Not in the sense of during the phase when things are exploding and he's beating you, but just being in an abusive relationship in general. What are some of the things that we can educate women on to cope internally? I'm not talking about washing the dishes, okay, because I got another story about dishes. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what can we do internally to help keep ourselves in a place where women can help keep themselves in a place where they can be present for their children? Because most of the cases that you all deal with are women with children. So what are some of those things? If you had to guess, just throw some stuff out there.
They shouldn't keep the problem to themselves. They should just sit down.
Having someone to talk to.
Yes.
Who is that one friend? Hopefully everyone has that one friend, whether it's an actual friend or a family member, that they can talk to. That's one thing. What else? Talking.
Going on a vacation.
Going on a vacation. Yeah. So, but you know what? So again, my mom's not here, so I can share this story. So one of my family members was in an abusive relationship, and I said to another relative, I said, why did she stay for so long? She stayed with him for 40 some years, and it sounds like to me that he beat her every day of that 40 years. And he said she didn't stay. She would leave. And I would like, what are you talking about? And he said, remember that time she came and she stayed with you and your family for a month? That was her coping. That was her getting away. So she was never going to divorce him, but she had to learn how to cope. And one of the ways that she learned how to cope is that she would go and visit her adult nieces and nephews for extended periods of time. So that's a legitimate coping skill. What else?
Contact with the person, whoever is supposed we are learning to talk loudly for it.
She says she will cut the contact with the person who is disturbing you.
Yeah.
And even in Ghana, yes, we have vacation. How many times?
What'd she say?
Our vacation is not vacation too much.
Yeah. Yeah. You get 2 weeks how much do you get a year? 2 weeks?
42 days.
You get 42 days? Okay, so most companies in the United States, you get 2 weeks. That's it.
Our work is tedious.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Weekend, holidays, everything.
For the whole year.
And you get weekend, you get,
Everything inclusive in the 42.
oh, everything's included in the 42 days. Okay, yeah. So, huh? Oh. So step 3 is people that, you guys, you know what, I've had such a good time today. Thank you. Normally, when I'm doing this with police officers, first of all, it's a room full of men. And no offense to the guys, but to be here and to be in a room with majority women and to just have this level of spirit in this room, I really appreciate it. People and settings that provide distraction. So what we're talking about there is going on vacation, but taking him along. So not necessarily taking him on a vacation, but is there a place that you all can go that can break that tension? Church. You know, if you go to church and you go to church on a regular, hey, let's go to church. Maybe visiting with family, you know, are there family in town? Is there people that we can connect with that can disrupt the tension that's in the home and get his mind somewhere else that will give you peace of mind or her peace of mind for a little bit. And then also on there is people you can ask for help. So you could take this form and spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes with a survivor and have them, and there's more to it, but having them work through this with you. Now I understand that the resources may be limited, but I do think, and I do imagine that this could be done in terms of this part of it. Now there are other parts of the form that talk about medical and psychological. That part may be where the resources are a little bit limited in terms of listing those and identifying those for a particular person. But I would think that this could be a good thing. Safety plans have been used quite a bit, or they've been used significantly for women in the United States, not just for women who have to go back into the home, but also women who are leaving the home, because we know in the United States that a woman that looks like us will leave a home 9 times before she stays for good. And that's even in situations where there are protective mechanisms in place, such as shelters and family members where she could stay. She'll stay, then she'll go back. She'll stay, and she'll go back. One of the reasons why women often will go back is because of family pressure. The family will say to her, you've been gone a month, he done learned his lesson, he ain't gonna do it again, go back. And you know, and that may happen the first 2 or 3 times. Then the family gets frustrated and they say, all right, you're not going back, you're here. But then she will say, the next, my kids. So then that's the next reason why my kids. And then finally, she starts to identify the reasons why it's important for her kids that she's no longer in that situation. And I've learned that scolding women, do you guys know scolding? Scolding, fussing, harassing, it doesn't do anything but upset you, or at least it upsets me. And so I've had to learn that this is a process, and they're not going to make any final steps until they're ready. And as much as I want to say, he's a jerk, he's this, how many times are you going to let him do this to you? That doesn't work. And double victimization or trauma. So what can we do that, well, let's talk about what, let me see. Okay, I'm gonna go. Okay, so what can we do? Forget it. Okay, so what are our do's? Speak in a normal and controlled voice. One of the things that I'm constantly telling police officers in the United States is turn the volume down. Because if they're in that room, if you got two folks in that room and he's been going at her and she didn't had enough and she's going back at him, and then you come in and you're not that calming factor, that's just a bomb waiting to go off. And then what happens is it takes away your power and your authority because you've entered into the fray. So in order to keep your place as the leader of this, trying to get this navigated, you can't lose control. Yes, ma'am.
Keep the volume
Down. Yes.
What is it? Keep the mood? Keep the volume down. Keep the volume. Oh, that's I should have copywritten that. So yeah, so we want to keep the volume down. We want to invoke a sense of calm. So what does that mean, that sense of calm? For me, that sense of calm is that when that woman came in with that 4-year-old who clearly had been traumatized, I couldn't have tears. You talked about that earlier. I had to stay the person in control because often they don't have control. Another example of this, and I'm going to wrap this up. The other example of this is once I was working with a woman who had been sexually assaulted on her kitchen table in front of her children by her neighbor. Walked in the house, kicked in the front door, threw her on the table, sexually assaulted her, got up, put his pants back together, and walked out the house and left the 2 children there. Bloodied her eyes, choked her out so bad that all of her blood vessels had burst, so her eyes were nothing but red. He was able to get out of jail early, before his court date. No one had sent me a picture of who he was, so I didn't know him. I came in later on this case, I wasn't there. Because afterwards, he went straight back downstairs to his wife and children. Went right back to okay. But I didn't know who he was, so I'm walking with her into court, and he's standing right there, staring at her. But I didn't know that that was him. Her brother was with her. He was her only source of support. The brother is furious. He is so mad. But who is he taking that anger out on? Me. Because I should have known. I couldn't have known that. But he was saying I should. So he called me everything but a child of God. Threatened to do to me what had happened to his sister. Got in my face and was pointing and threatening to the point where one of our officers came over and was threatening to lock him up. But at the same time, my main focus was here in tears. So could I be fearful? I had to stay calm because I needed to be there for her because we still had to go through the court hearing. Express kindness, patience, and acceptance. Even if we don't agree, and even if, as upset as I was at having to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go deal with a prostitute, I couldn't, girl, you need Jesus. I couldn't do none of that. Can I lay hands? I couldn't do any of that. I had to stay in my job, which was kindness, patience, and acceptance. I mean, because sometimes that's where we go, right? Because we're thinking of personal, like, and we can't do that. We have to stay in the professional. Still seeing the humanity in people, seeing their pain, understanding that there's a reason. There's a reason why that young lady had 4 boyfriends at 14. Okay? And it wasn't just because she liked boys, because nobody likes boys that much. I mean, we may like boys, but we don't like them that much, not at 14. So there was a reason for that behavior. If we're not expressing kindness, patience, and acceptance and understanding, then how are we going to get to the reason? So the next thing you know, she's going to have 8 boyfriends and STI and all these other issues that we in society have to deal with. Open-ended questions. Okay, so I thought this was kind of funny. Don't ask why. So don't ask why. Why don't we ever ask why? Why is that a problematic question? And the reason why I say don't do it is because often people aren't trained to know how to do it. So it's just best to avoid it. Because why often leads to victim blaming. Why were you there? Why was that? Why was that your choice? Why do you have 14 boyfriends? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? That's not our purpose to understand her why. That why is meant for her therapist. That why is meant for her doctor. That why is meant for all of the other people who want to love on her and care on her and get to the bottom of her problems. That's not our job. Our job is to support.
The one that you said why, in our scope of work, you have to ask questions. If you come up with the fact. So we sat down, asked, why were you there? What happened?
But you can ask who, what, when, and where. But sometimes you have to be careful with asking why, because why leads to more guilt. I understand. Okay.
Yes, it depends.
Okay.
What you are handling. Depends on handling. So you have to maybe if you say the person will tell you more. The reason why I went there, or maybe the reason why I have a 5 boyfriend. So maybe after explaining all those things, the problem is coming from the parent. Maybe parental care, now parental care is coming. So sometimes it shouldn't be so much, but the why sometimes comes.
Okay.
So can we say that instead of saying why did you go there, you could say what are you doing there? She will still express herself. But once you say why, she begins to see that you are blaming her. You are making her the one at fault. So the closing up will still come. So instead of using why, we could use what were you doing there? What happened? What took you there? So we could use what, when, where, who, instead of the why. It makes it easier for both of you.
Because the other part of this.
Can I add? In psychology, people who feel guilt, when you ask why, you stamp the guilt more. And especially in the cases and environments where looking at power, gender roles, and all of that, it's already difficult for a lady, a woman or a young girl to come out and say this. Maybe even before coming to the officers, some people had already said so many things to them. So immediately the word why comes, it triggers something in their mind that, okay, she thinks I am wrong as well. So like they are saying, using other, okay, what happened? You open them up to talk. Why sounds more judgmental than asking for information?
I think too, even with my experience with working with victims, they're going to tell you everything because they want to get it out. So even if you just sit there and listen, they're just going to talk because that's part of the process, and that's why they're there. Now, teenagers are a little different, but at least with adult women, they're going to it's just going to come out like water out of a faucet because they want it. The other thing that they want to get it out there. The other thing is Respect personal space. We talked about that earlier today, just in terms of recognizing that some folks who are dealing with trauma, touching is problematic. So what shouldn't we do? We don't want to shout. We don't want to lose control of our emotions, because we have to be the grown-up in the room. We have to be the adult, especially when you're dealing with children, with two domestic violence situations. The emotions are high. You don't know who's saying, where things are coming from. So you have to always be in control. Don't use your phone. Remain present with your client. It is so easy for us to get distracted on our phones. Even if you're zoning out, which hopefully you're not, but at least make the appearance that you're there by not getting on your phone. If they feel like you don't care, why should, then they're not going to care. And it's the continuation. Body language, be mindful, give. All of that authoritative stuff we do with our kids, we don't want to do that with our survivors. Don't interrupt, judge, or try to fix things, okay? Give options, but unless it's the court aspect, if we're talking about victims and survivorship, the only thing that you can do is just offer suggestions, give them options, but don't make demands. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to get into that, but I do want to talk a little bit about addressing sexual assault cases, and this is just real quick. It's just 2 points, or 3. Medical intervention is the most important, again, because we want to protect the victim's health and also preserve evidence. Before you do anything or say anything to that young person, get them to a medical care provider. If you have a person who is an expert in evidence collection in this region, that should be your first go-to. Where I come from, we have a person who is trained to collect evidence on victims of sexual assault, and then we have another person who is trained to collect evidence of sexual assault on children. So getting them into those places, educating, and I thought the forum was great on this when we did this in, was it November or December, where we talked about not preserving of evidence with the community of you don't want, as dirty as you may feel, you don't want to shower, because when you shower, you're washing away that evidence. Treating all victims the same, respect, care, and understanding. What does that look like? That's not rushing. That's recognizing that sometimes you have to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're going through this. One of the things that I always say is it's not your fault, because I don't believe it's ever anyone's fault. I don't believe that women set out to want to be sexually assaulted. I've never met a woman who's been sexually assaulted that wanted to be sexually assaulted. I don't believe personally that dress determines whether a person should be sexually assaulted, that any other behavior contributes to that. Again, sexual assault is just like any other form of abuse. It's about power and control. If it was about something else, they would go and find somebody that they loved, So recognizing that, understanding that. And then this is the other thing. Not all victims will present with physical trauma. We're coming out of this age where we're used to, and in our minds, thinking that a person who is a victim of sexual assault is going to have a bruise. They're going to have a broken arm, because the notion is that they had to fight back in order to show that they didn't have consent. That is in the past. We are not there anymore. Today, we are in a position where we recognize that not all victims will have physical signs of trauma. And so we have to recognize that. So I'm going to end it there. Any questions? I tried to go fast. Any questions? Thank you. Is this mine? Can I have this? Thank you. Everybody stand up. Stand up. Stand up. So we're going to do an exercise real quick. So I need for you to pair up and stand in front of someone. Bismarck, can you come and demonstrate this with me? You have to get and stand directly. Stand right here. Okay. So stand just like Bismarck and I are standing. With your partner, one person. Oh, he doesn't have a partner. I didn't say hold hands, I just said stand in front of them.
Are we fighting?
No, you're not fighting. So, you're not holding hands, you're just standing in front of the person. Now, one of you are going to ball up your fist like this. Ball them up like this. Ball them up. Only one of you. Only one of you. Now, listen so that you have the instructions. The person whose hands are not balled up, you have to get that other person to open their hands. All right, let's go. Come on. Come on. Now, how are you going to get them to open their hands? No, your hands aren't open. You got to get her to not open her hands. To open her hands. So how are you going to get her to open her hands? How?
Is it to pull the arm down or to open the fist?
It's just to ask. All right, come on. Who got it? How many got their partner's hands open? All I said was you got to get the hands open.
Are we opening the hands like this?
It doesn't matter. You just got to get them open. Okay. All right. We're going to stop before somebody gets hurt. And I'm going to demonstrate to you the correct way to do this. Bismarck, ball up your hands, please. Would you kindly open your hands? Oh, you guys can sit down now. You can sit down. But what was the purpose of that? So what did you get out of that?
You have the power to open the person.
You have the power to open the person's hands by just what? By just asking. You know, we all went to this idea of this physical, that it has to be this physical confrontation, that it, and I tell you, I've done this everywhere I go, and it's always the same, where everybody's trying to plow the hands and asking, well, how do you want us to do it? And I just want you to ask. So, okay.